Welcome to Living Outside the Box, where you'll get a taste of real America and see what life is like living outside the controlled paradigm. This is your host, Lance and Christian, and today we'll be discussing Trump's latest cabinet picks. Fantastic. All right, well, this is awesome. This is our first podcast ever, our very first podcast for the Living Outside the Box show, so I'm excited. How about you?
Yes, I'm very excited. This is great. We're going to talk about lots of fun stuff. I'm really super psyched about this.
Oh, totally. So first of all, Lance, I'm curious, what are you doing for winter right now? I mean, we've got tons of snow up here in Idaho. It just dumped on us the last few days. So what are you up to right now with the property? You're living off grid. You've got animals. I got to see your new, what is it, like pygmy goats or Nubian?
Dwarf Nigerian goats.
Oh,
Yeah,
dwarf
fun
Nigerian.
little suckers. It's a lot different when you have animals on the homestead. So basically, like everybody else, just trying to stay warm this winter. But of course, having the homestead, having the animals, trying to get water from freezing, everything is a lot more critical in that sense. So that is our first and primary focus, getting everything set up so we know that no matter what happens, if it's the coldest winter ever, if it's negative 40 for 2 weeks straight, or if we get a gazillion inches of snow, that basically we're not going to freeze. The animals aren't going to freeze. The water's going to keep running. We'll have plenty of firewood. That's the main priority, and everything after that is just a bonus, right?
Yeah, that's awesome, Lance, for sure. No, I hear you. We're definitely working on that as well, too, on our property and getting everything taken care of. So it's excellent. But yeah, I wanted to ask you, too, I'm curious what your thoughts on the latest with Trump and the news and headlines today. What are your thoughts on what's going on?
Oh my gosh! I mean, so many interesting headlines, so many things going on. Let's start with the tragic, but unfortunately common headline we're looking at right now: more Muslim terror attacks. Russian ambassador assassinated by guys screaming "Allah Akbar" off-duty policemen in Turkey. That's a pretty big deal. It's going to be interesting to see how Russia responds to that. Then, at the same time that happens, we see the attack at the German Christmas market by, assumably, we don't know at this point, but ISIS claimed responsibility. Another Muslim driving a truck or a bus or something like that into a group of people. Crazy stuff that seems so common nowadays, right? I mean, it seems like every day or week or month we're hearing about more of these unfortunate attacks.
Yeah, no, that's right. Well, I'm curious. Do you know what's going on with this Russian ambassador that was killed? What's the backstory? Why did it happen? Is there any information as to what this nut job was thinking?
I don't have all the details on it yet. I just, from what I've gleaned so far, it appears that the guy that did it was an off-duty cop, so he was able to use his credentials to get inside the building. And the Russian ambassador to Turkey, they were in Turkey at the time when this happened, was at an arts exhibit, something to do with the art exhibit. It was a closed exhibit, and the cop was able to get in there with his ID, went in there and just pulled a gun, offed the Russian ambassador, and then made a series of statements why he was doing it, because of events going on in Syria. And basically that's what it was. He was going to claim, suffering upon the Russians for what the Russians allegedly did to his particular group that he was advocating.
Right.
So that's everything that I know about it right now.
Well, obviously the biggest piece of news right now is the fact that the Electoral College made Trump president officially. Like they all voted for him today, and we didn't have this massive coup that's been in the news for so long, and Drudge and all the conservative news websites saying that these liberal leftist extremists are going to take over and have Hillary Clinton win based on the Electoral College votes. All the threats, the death threats, and the attacks coming after these electors has been pretty intense, it sounds like. And yet, in the end, I didn't think anything would come of it. I figured it was just like a bunch of sour grapes coming from the Clinton camp, and they're trying to do whatever they can to just harm Trump and his whole populist movement in some way, or shape, right? And so I feel like they tried to do that with the Electoral College, and yet it didn't work. Everything is moving forward as smooth as can be, I guess.
And they had to have known, of course, it wouldn't work. And it's interesting, yet they still tried to disrupt things. It's great, and we should be celebrating that much more that Trump is that much more in the presidency. But it's interesting. It's like when he was elected, we're all super excited, and then that honeymoon seemed to have, eventually waned for a lot of people after a couple of weeks, once they realized, like, hey, maybe this guy can't do everything that he's promising to do, that he wants to do, because there's so many globalist powers out there against him. And And then, okay, he's elected, so everybody's really excited about that. Now he's even more elected because the Electoral College has voted him in. And yet at the same time, I don't think we're all celebrating as much as we normally would be or should be, because we're all taking it with a grain of salt because we still have to go to the inauguration. And that'll be another event, right? Like he's, okay, finally, he's inaugurated. It's more official now, but there's still going to be that hesitancy because people are still going to be worried. They're going to think, well, let's wait 6 months and see if he's actually able to do things or put people in place. It's like these little small steps that we keep taking towards what we hope is going to be an anti-globalist president, but nothing's black and white, and it's not here until it's here.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think that was a dead-on assessment. I mean, that's exactly how I feel about it as well, too. They're going to keep on trying to take him down. But you know what's interesting, too, Lance, and we've talked about this before, is that we've got, Donald Trump, who had this huge populist movement. He's, according to guys like Alex Jones, he's aware of the conspiracy and these people that have been keeping this country down for so long and transferring all of our power to China and everything else, right? And yet, even still, this guy has been appointing people to positions in his cabinet who are a part of the globalist machine, and I can't help but wonder if this guy is just going to end up being ineffective because he's put in so many dirtbags to, run the show and who, regardless of whether they're sucking up to him now or not, are going to stab him in the back in the future.
Yeah, that's totally right. I mean, we're all kind of hanging on edge, looking at who's going to be part of his cabinet, who's he's putting in for different positions. I mean, what did he say he's going to do? You've got to flush out Wall Street and
drain the swamp
and all this stuff. So who does he put in charge of the economic advisor position? Head of Goldman Sachs. I mean, that's pretty telling. It seems like every head of the the Treasury for the last 50 years seems to be a Goldman Sachs guy or somebody like a Goldman Sachs guy or a J.P. Morgan guy. So for him to pick him as economic advisor, it doesn't bode well. I don't see him doing anything radical like attempting to end the Fed anytime soon, or something we would have seen from, say, a Ron Paul presidency.
Right. Yeah. So I know that Trump recently appointed Rex Tillerson, the CEO of ExxonMobil, as his Secretary of State. And not only that, but he added, I think John Bolton is the Assistant Secretary of State. He was like super CFR. He's what do you call it? One of those war hacks, war hawk. He's one of those guys who wants us to get involved all over the world and police the world and get in all these wars and, fight Russia and Iran and all the rest of it. But I don't know. That was kind of a good move in the sense that I think Tillerson does want peace with Russia, and yet the guy is like pro Common Core. He embraces globalist organizations like Planned Parenthood, and he's pro a bunch of crazy stuff that these globalists are for, right? I mean, a lot of the militarization agenda. So I don't know. What's your thoughts on him?
He's not like officially embedded with the globalist. He's not in all of the A-list clubs, and yet at the same time, though, he seems like what's the expression? Not fellow walker, but something along those lines. He certainly falls in line with a lot of the globalist agendas and globalist policies. So yeah, it could be a lot worse. If Hillary was in there, she would have picked somebody certainly far worse. But he doesn't sound like a great guy that's going to shake things up and really work for American sovereignty and American people. He sounds like he's going to be working towards keeping the wheels greased in international commerce, and he's going to do all the things that just keep the corporate interests going that might not necessarily and usually aren't in the interests of individual Americans' freedom and liberty and sovereignty and all the things that the individual Americans care about.
That's right. Oh, I know for sure. Yeah. I mean, my hope is that Trump will put all these people in to maybe appease, the globalists and powers that be. And then when they don't perform, or just regardless, once we get into, past inauguration, he's actually in office, he is the president, then he just fires them all and puts in a bunch of Ron Paul types.
That would be amazing. That's everybody's hope, right?
Yeah.
It's just a big thing to appease all the people in power right now, to kind of keep them off guard. And then once he gets into power, if they don't play out, which you might, think they're not going to play out, then yeah, you're fired.
Exactly.
I don't know. That's a big stretch. He's putting a lot of people in a lot of positions right now, and it doesn't look good. It's kind of hard to believe he's just going to, start firing people carte blanche once he is inaugurated. But I don't know. Let's hope he's. I personally feel the guy is a good guy. I think he really wants to do the right thing. I think he should be smart enough not to be duped by the powers that be.
Right.
We can only find out, I guess, when it happens. Again, it's going through these steps. It's like, okay, you got elected, awesome, but I have my reservations. He got the Electoral College, awesome, but I've got my reservations. He'll hopefully get inaugurated soon, and that'll be awesome, but we'll still have reservations until the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Well, anyway, so what about this guy, Rick Perry? I mean, I don't want to offend a lot of people here, but personally, I've got some family and friends who love the guy, but I think he's kind of an idiot. And Rick Perry was picked for the energy secretary under Trump's cabinet. And here's what Joel Skousen says about the guy. And for those of you who don't know Joel, he's like this really super smart guy who ran, what was it, like the conservative caucus decades ago in D.C. I don't know, something like that. But super amazing guy, super smart. And I definitely don't agree with everything that he puts out, but certainly his analysis is fantastic, and there's a lot that I get out of that. So here's what he says about Rick Perry. He says, ex-governor of Texas is Trump's pick for energy secretary, and he says that's the department that Perry wanted to eliminate, which is pretty interesting. We'll see if he puts himself out of a job and gets rid of the whole department, but anyways, he says, I don't think he understood at the time that the Energy Department runs all the U.S. nuclear weapons and power operations, which can't be eliminated. And I don't think Perry is competent or smart, but he will follow through with Trump's mandate to free up coal and oil exploration, which is, yeah, that's good. But at the same time, we'll see. He's definitely not the sharpest tool in the shed.
Yeah, I agree with you there. It's, I read that same article by Scoos and the commentary there, and it was interesting what he goes on to say how can you eliminate things when everything is so huge, when the whole DC metropolis, it's such a vast system with so many people dependent upon it, so many people dependent upon their jobs are going to do everything they can to keep the Department of Energy going, the Department of Energy, I don't know how many people are involved with that, but if there's 20 some million people being paid by the federal government right now, we can assume that the Department of Energy is pretty huge. So those people are going to have a vested interest in making sure that that department stays intact, keeps pushing paperwork, keeps doing regulations, keeps doing all the things that justifies the employees getting their paychecks. So
Yeah.
Perry, it's easy to make a blanket statement. Yeah, we don't need that department. But once he's there, he's going to be, finding himself sort of caught up in the whole thing and lose sight of the purity of his first statements. And he's probably just going to be rendered another, dupe or another some version of the guy in charge, whether he's aware of what's going on or not, and be played and pulled and made a puppet of the organization by other people that can pull the strings, unless, like you say, Trump fires him if he's not performing, or Trump tells him what to do and he can actually do what Trump tells him what to do. But how can one guy have so much control over such a vast organization? The organization might just, control him. We don't know.
Right, exactly. I agree. How about Carly Fiorina? I remember seeing her in the debates early on. She's the new director of national intelligence. That sounds a little scary, actually.
Yeah. The fact that, she's, the scary thing about her is that she, hopefully from a benevolent perspective and really wants to help people and help the country, believes that we need surveillance, that the federal government needs surveillance over people, needs control over people. It sounds great to some, conservatives out there if they think that, if the government's going to, be tough on terrorism and be tough on the bad guys and be tough on criminals, and I'm willing to allow them to have that power. But people don't realize that even if Trump uses that power benevolently, what happens in 4 years or 8 years, or what happens if people within his organization don't use that power benevolently? So many people thought, yeah, we'll give Bush lots of power after 9/11. We got to be hard on those terrorists. And then how did that end up? We have, the Patriot Act, Part 1, Part 2, and whatever addendums come after that. And there's so much lack of freedom, so much lack of transparency.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many closed courts and secret files and spying. I don't know. Anytime I hear anything about somebody like Carly, Fiorina being aggressive towards, intelligence and collecting data on people, and it scares me because it never seems to end well for the average guy on the street. It seems like he just loses more freedom.
No, not at all. Either she's totally blind to what is going on, and people that would seek to use technologies like Apple's phones and Google's websites to track people and monitor what they're doing for evil, or she's just extremely naive. You know what I mean? I'm sorry, she's extremely naive, or she's a part of it, right? So she's like
Yeah.
in the game, she's with them. She's like, yeah, I'm gonna be your pawn or whatever. But she was the one who did urge actually Apple and Google to tear down the quote cyber walls and help track down criminals, which we know can just be used against us to and everything else. And
Yeah.
actually, I should issue a correction here. So it says that this is just tentative. So she's not the final pick, but more than likely will be.
Yes, yes, that's right. There's always the chance somebody won't be, but we'll see what happens. Fiorina, it's interesting what she says. She kind of reflects upon, there's different generations of conservatives, different definitions and concepts of conservatives. I mean, we have these terms, neocons and rhinos and Republicans and conservatives and social conservatives and economic conservatives. A lot of variation there. When she's talking about how surveillance can be good and we have to be hard on the terrorists, we have to have surveillance to protect the American people, there's a lot of predominantly, not to pick on older conservatives, but there was a time in the post-World War II period, throughout the 50s and 60s, and people that grew up in that generation where they really had a lot more faith in the federal government, and they
Right.
would have more of that sort of hawkish stance on there is a sense of we, the American people, and then there's a sense of them, the bad guys, and then there's this concept that the American government is fundamentally good for all of its flaws, and they're the ones that are more likely to go ahead and support Fiorina in a call for we got to be tough on the terrorists by having more control over your iPhone and more backdoors that are federally mandated into your electronic devices. And again, older people that might not be so dependent or might not use iPhones and tablets and computers and things like that so much might think, hey, I don't use those anyways. I don't even know what those things are. So what do I care? It's no sweat off my back. But they don't realize that they're really just supporting what is not necessarily a benevolent government. Certainly elements of the government are not always benevolent. We've seen time and time again where they can be used for malevolent purposes, where branches of the government are illicitly spying on people. And unfortunately, we always have to look at the worst case scenario. Okay, if she, causes or forces Apple to allow backdoors for the federal government in, like what's the worst thing that can happen? And basically, it's going to be lots of unwarranted spying on, people that are innocent, that have never been proven guilty and might never be proven guilty, but they're
Yeah,
going to be
that's
spied
right.
upon anyways. And that's what, makes me cautious and critical and unhappy to hear that he picks somebody like her in a position like that.
Right. But what I've loved to see, and I've seen this last year and a half, maybe 2 years actually, close to it, when Trump first got into the race, he has done a lot, though he speaks very vague about certain things. He's done a lot to reach the masses of people, and even the older generation who felt like the government's always been there to help them from day one, to see that, hey, that's not the case. And he does it through kind of bringing in the idea that, oh, it's all the leftist, super extremist liberals' fault. They're the ones who are really in control now, and they're pulling the strings. But in a way, by making them receptive through certain channels like that and certain verbiage to what's really going on behind the scenes, he's allowed many people to be aware of what's happening, even amongst the Republicans, so-called Republican conservatives, we want to say, right, who've been pushing the TPP and all these trade agreements to absolutely just gut this country from anything it has left in terms of economic freedom and the ability to produce jobs, especially in manufacturing. And that's been awesome. That's been great to see this mass awakening. People in my own family who I thought were just a lost cause have come back and said, I'm a Trump fan, and I see what he's talking about. I want to see better trade deals. I want to see new agreements. I hate what's going on. I'm really sick of the Republican leadership and all the crap they're spewing, and it's been awesome to see. So there
Yeah,
is
he
one
hit
huge thing.
Absolutely. I mean, he hit that populist vein, that vein that was just getting ready to burst, that wanted to have somebody, acknowledge them. And that was exactly it. It's not even so much about Trump per se in this election. It's about the fact that all of these people stood up to vote for him, or they would have voted for somebody like him. People were just itching, chomping at the bit to actually finally have an outlet to speak, finally have the ability to say, we're madder than hell and we're not going to take it anymore, as it were.
Yeah.
And they put somebody like Trump in power. It's going to be a shame if all of them get duped and Trump is another, just another globalist puppet or whatever he is that plays along. But the fact that those people are out there, that they put them in power, that's what shook things up. That's what got the attention of the globalists. That's what shook up so many people in the ivory towers across the Western Hemisphere, thinking, I can't believe this guy was elected. I can't believe the people would elect him. And they were so detached from the people that they really had no idea what was going on. That, literally up there in their ivory towers and their Council of Foreign Relations and their Bilderberger meetings and their headquarters in Brussels and London and DC. It's so detached from the mass angry populist outcry that puts Trump into power.
Yeah, that's right. No, for sure. So let me ask you this, Lance. What do you think about Ivanka Trump? I mean, she's somebody who has massive favor with her father. So let's say Trump gets in there, he survives the inauguration in what's called Bloody Friday, according to ISIS, who wants to cause all kinds of bombings or whatever else. But he survives, he's in office, and you've got Ivanka Trump here now, who probably will have a very either a strong position in his administration officially, or at the very least be a very, very close advisor. She moved her family to D.C. recently, so she's going to be there at the White House. She's going to be there with him. I mean, she could be a co-president in many ways, according to, I think it was the New York Times or one of those articles that just came out about that. But what's interesting about her, and I have concerns, is that maybe she is, I don't know how liberal she is, but I don't really know what her views are. And so for her to have such a strong pull with her dad, I wonder if she'll actually be able to push through a lot of more, liberalistic type agendas in terms of, like, let's have the government finance, the child care program, or let's have, whatever else, right? All these government funded things that she thinks are doing good. Again, and getting back to the older view of old school liberalism, which is like, hey, I shouldn't say too old school, not like Thomas Jeffersonian type old school, but just but it's like the '60s, where it's like, hey, let's just benefit people and help them through the government. So it's like just trying to give handouts and be good in that way and make a difference, even though it doesn't work well. What do you think about her? I mean, is she?
That's a huge concern. I mean, it's a double-edged sword. It can go one of two ways. If it's a great family and the family's cohesive and they have lots of power and pull and they're working for the American people, great. That's so much the better. If they're a cohesive unit functioning together, working against the American people, Clinton's, for example, there's been a lot of examples over the years, that would be bad. It's interesting that, her husband played such a large part in heading the whole candidacy for Trump and helping him get elected. And he originally was, of course, a big-time Democratic donor and a big-time Democratic player in those politics. And it seemed, he's certainly good at helping somebody get elected, but how could somebody change ideologies? Or maybe they're not that fixated on their ideologies and they just kind of go where the wind blows and where the power takes them. That's just something that has to remain to be seen. But let's assume that Trump, he's a strong guy. He's a strong-willed guy. Let's assume that he can run his family, like he can run the boardroom and he can run all of the businesses. Let's say that he will listen to them, and it's good sometimes to have a tempering effect. Maybe he's going to be a little too harsh on something and needs softened up, and then the soft voice of a gentle woman comes along that's essentially what one of the great aspects of women throughout humanity is. If it wasn't for them, we'd still be barbarians living in caves,
Very true.
So there could be a good element from that. Let's just assume that Trump, though, is going to have the final say and have the proper judgment to know what the final answer is. I don't think he's going to run his household like a democracy. I think he's going to run it with him in charge. I think that's how he runs it, I should say. But I also know that he surrounds himself by intelligent people. He likes to listen to people. He likes to keep an open mind. So, it could go good or bad. I think that going through the filter of Trump, he's going to take the good, glean the good from the bad, and hopefully try to distribute the good aspects of that to the American people and to his presidency. But, time will tell.
The most interesting thing I think will come from we'll see after the inauguration is Hillary Clinton's indictment, as well as her husband and many other, hopefully hundreds, if not thousands of people, all part of not only that team, but just people who have been corrupt, who have been a part of that swamp, as Trump talks about. And I hope to see all of them be brought to justice. But certainly, I think for a lot of Americans out there, seeing Hillary Clinton in an orange jumpsuit is going to be bring great satisfaction to them.
I would think that they would throw the American people that bone just because if anything, what a great bread and circuses for the masses, right?
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
right.
first of all, how does a politician get busted? It doesn't happen too often. Traffickants, got busted. Other people over the years get busted, but they don't get busted for doing illegal things against the American people. That's not the definition amongst their elitist circles of a good politician. We, the American people, think a good politician is one that keeps his oath to the Constitution and operates for the benefit of the American people, and that's what they're supposed to do. They have a whole different concept of a good politician. Amongst their elitist circles, a good politician is somebody that can make a deal and keep their end of the deal, and that's that. And if you break
Right.
the deal, if you don't follow through, it turns into more of a mafia type thing where you get dealt with. And this is not something that we see through the filter of the mainstream media. It's something that most Americans don't see. So for her to go down for something, it's not because she did something bad against the American people or violated the laws of the country. It's because she ripped somebody off in the process of all of her dirty dealings. And all of those people that donated all of that money for her candidacy, I would think that they can't be very happy that they lost. I mean, did you see the recent what was it, her dinner? I can't remember what they call it, but the aftermath dinner where she had all of her donors together. And I heard it was like a funeral there. I heard it was just such a low energy, low key, depressing event. So
Yeah.
she doesn't have a huge amount of support. So maybe the powers that be would, get some sense and say, hey, let's throw the American people a bone. Let's give them a big show. It'll make them feel good about themselves,
Make
take
them
some
feel like they
pressure,
won. Yeah.
make them feel like they won, take pressure off of all the other, corruption in the federal government, and let her wear the orange jumpsuit along with, all the other people involved in the whole thing. I'm reading an article right here, a headline, Judge orders unsealing of search warrant in Clinton email probe. A federal judge has ordered the unsealing of a search warrant. Played a role in the whole thing that was going on with the investigation into her. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Like I say, I think it would be smart for them to throw the American people that one little fun thing to talk about on TV for a couple of weeks and watch her get arrested.
Yeah, they will. They will. I think they will for sure. I think we're going to see a lot more coming out, a lot more information about what she's been involved with, all kinds of really disgusting, sick things, and it'll take her down. I think that these people who have been supporting her, I mean, they're so... She is such an evil woman, according to people that know her and have been around her, that, she's been probably betraying people all along the way at every level of what she's been doing and just pissing off of everybody, a whole bunch of people. So no doubt they're going to let her go down. They're probably going to just totally drop the hammer on her and try to create this whole ruse that everything is great now and we're winning, guys, and it's all good until one day they just drop the hammer on us and they, crash the economy or do who knows what, right? Take out the president. But anyways, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But
yeah, totally.
Lance, let's go ahead and actually bring it to a close here. I want to let you all know out there listening that we have a whole lot more coming, a whole lot more planned for this podcast. It's going to be 100 times more amazing than this first one right here, but it's going to be super cool. We've got a lot of amazing guests lined up for the future, and we're also working on a few different events we can go ahead and take part and broadcast everybody out there in terms of like preparedness and politics and just living a different life, living outside the matrix, or in this case, outside the box. So it's going to be really interesting. I'm looking forward to having you all tune in for the future. But Lance, thanks so much. We'll talk soon.
Yes, definitely. We'll talk to you later.